Welcome to the Passive Income Podcast. I am your host, Dividend Dave. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on any of the audio platforms, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. I have so many incredible upcoming guests that you will not want to miss. And speaking of incredible guests, please welcome joining me on this episode on Twitter at Dividend Bulls. So I'll throw it over to you to give yourself a little introduction.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me. It's great to be on finally. Yeah, so anyway, I'm Dividend Bulls. My real name's Marcus. I try to keep this as anonymous as I can. And so basically, I am 29. I got my start about 3 years ago investing seriously. I've dabbled in investing in the past, but nothing too serious. Buying a Tesla share here and there, and then selling it in a couple of days. But yeah, anyway, I in my 9 to 5, I do sales support for a brand protection company, and when I'm not doing that, I'm nerding out over my spreadsheets and doing research for my new dividend positions that I have, and I keep adding to all the time. So yep, I have a wife, no kids. We're dual income, no kids for the
Yeah.
foreseeable future because that's uh, cost effective. Yeah, it would be a
Yeah,
nightmare
good.
if we try to do that.
Yeah, pretty good place to be in life at your age.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's and just for the viewers, listeners, before we started out, you said you were in Idaho. So, and obviously, as people know, I'm in Ontario, Canada, which means obviously there'll be a bit of back and forth between U.S. and Canadian markets, which is good. It's always a nice comparison. I really enjoy the discussions I have with my American guests. And yeah,
Yeah.
I guess. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just about to say, unfortunately, I don't have any positions in Canadian stocks, but I've been trying to get into into a couple
Yeah, yeah.
pretty soon.
I'm sure you probably follow a lot of other Canadians on in the dividend Twitter community, and so I'm sure you're familiar with several of them that I will probably mention or talk about. So you mentioned Tesla, and I guess I first, is Tesla a car company or a technology company?
To be honest, I don't know what it is. You had Elon at one point buying up shares of Dogecoin or allowing that to be, currency with buying a Tesla. So they had crypto holdings. They had, they sell cars. I think ultimately it's a tech company. They start with obviously the cars and the self-driving, the autopilot feature, what have
Right,
you. But that could be applied to a number of different things. It could be applied to a refrigerator, something that automatically senses that if
right.
you're out of milk or something, it'll automatically order it for you. There's so much that could be done with that. But yeah, I got out of them a while ago, and they don't pay out a dividend, so I'm not interested.
Yeah, great point. I have a few growth stocks, but yeah, the majority of my portfolio is dividends because just it's show me the money. I like to see that cash coming in on a either monthly or quarterly basis to just at this point, and I'm sure you're the same, to just keep reinvesting your dividend every time you get them.
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with those growth positions like, Meta and PayPal and those, but they're just so volatile that for me, I like to sleep better at night, not worrying about, oh, is it going to drop 30% overnight?
Right.
Yeah, so I like sticking with the tried and true blue chips that are pretty steady, and they only make drastic moves if a really bad earnings report or the market in its entirety goes down. So I'm
Yeah.
okay with those type of corrections.
So since we kind of started out with the technology sector or talking a little bit about technology, anything else in technology that interests you?
Not at this point. I mean, I'm not into Apple right now. The yield is just a little too low for my liking at this point, even though it's growing. I'm more interested in the mid tier yields
Right.
and above at this point.
Yeah, yeah, great comment. So just for comparison, I was I think it was a Canadian guest that I had on not too long ago, and we were discussing how the Canadian technology sector has kind of fallen off, taken a back seat. BlackBerry is still a company, but they're nowhere near what they used to be. They don't even make phones anymore. I believe now they do security software. And Corel, which was one of the original like Photoshop type programs, I'm not sure if that's even still in existence. Those were two of the bigger Canadian tech companies back, 15, 20 years ago. But yeah, the Canadian technology sector has seemed to have like drastically dropped off, and obviously most of the tech now is Silicon Valley or wherever else. Like you mentioned, Meta and Apple, and then I mean there was earnings reports this past week or the week before, Google and Amazon and all of them that came out, and so many of those share prices are so low right now. So they could be good buys. Again, not financial advice. Do your own due diligence and do what's best for you. But before we move on from technology, any last thoughts on that sector?
Yeah, not really. I don't have a lot of big holdings in there at the moment.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it just kind of started out there because that first mention of Tesla. But yeah, we can move on. What is your favorite sector, or the sector that would be like the biggest percentage of your portfolio?
Yeah, so right now it's a tie between healthcare and REITs, so real
Nice.
estate. So yeah, those are. I mean, they're always going to be around. Healthcare, the
Yeah,
Pfizer's of the world are constantly coming out with new drugs. So, that's a pretty good bet. Again, not financial advice, but just in my in my opinion. And then REITs, how can you not have some of those in your portfolio? They're just so attractive.
I love
Um,
REITs.
I know.
Yeah, so the number one REIT uh, that I always see Americans tweet about is Realty Income. So I'm sure that's probably one of your favorites as well.
Yes, it's and surprisingly, it's one of the lower yields for my REITs. I only have 3 or 4 of them, but that one's always so consistent and it's so great. The one that I'm actually really really excited about, and they just had a pretty good earnings report, is Arbor Realty Trust.
Okay,
That's one that I've been consistently adding to for the past year or so. And yeah, they're one of those companies that they grow their dividend every single quarter, and they have been
wow.
for the past almost 3 years now. But it's only a cent every time. But it's
Still,
very interesting.
it's always nice, even if it's one penny at a time. One penny at a time. I had him on as well. Good podcast and a good follow on Twitter if you know who that is. But yeah, sort of like the saying, brick by brick, but the one penny at a time. Those pennies add up, and pennies turn into dollars, and dollars turn into more dollars. So over
Yeah.
time, right? It's a long term. It's definitely a long term investing goal or strategy with dividends, obviously, right?
hmm And it's always interesting seeing people just starting, and seeing that. I'm happy that they're so encouraged by it.
Yeah,
They share their dividends of like 30 cents here and there. It's like,
yeah,
and they're super pumped about it. That I'm like, that's great, because when I was at that point, I was like, oh geez, when is this going to start growing? And
yeah.
I've only been doing it for 3 years, and I've definitely seen the improvement. So you just got to stick with it.
Yeah, I saw one of those tweets recently. It was somebody, I can't even remember which currency it was in, whether it was Canadian or U.S. dollars, or could have even have been British pounds. But it was 57 cents, and they were so, like you said, they were just so stoked to get that they were like, this is my first ever dividend payment. 57, whether it was 57 cents or 57 pence, I can't remember which currency, but just the tweet was inspirational, I guess, because it's like you got to start out somewhere. Everybody starts, or
hmm
you have to start somewhere, and yeah, and I think they could already see just from that very first dividend that it was going to grow over time.
Right.
And it doesn't take long to turn that 57 cents into a dollar, and then that dollar into $2, and then $2 into five, and five into 10, and so on, right?
hmm
And obviously, it's very important to, obviously as well, like every paycheck, you've got to set a little bit aside. Obviously, pay your bills and do what you have to do to maintain your cost of living. But you definitely also have to, to keep investing out of, I- if not every paycheck, at least once a month, right? To throw into your brokerage account, whether it's $100 or 200 or 500, sort of whatever you can afford, and that's uh, another big part of the strategy, I would say, right?
Absolutely. And don't get discouraged if you see other people dropping in $500 at a time and you can only do 50.
Right.
The sooner you start and the sooner you build that up, the more it'll compound and the better off you'll be 10, 15, 30 years from now.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%. Obviously, everyone's position in life is different, and if you're right, if you can only afford 25 or $50 a month, that's a lot better than zero. Like,
Hmm.
anything is anything is 100% better than zero. So, uh,
Exactly.
so sticking with or keeping with REITs, as you know, I love REITs as well. And you mentioned healthcare, and we have a popular one here in Canada called NWH. You may have seen on Twitter, Northwest Healthcare,
I
and it's a
have.
REIT. It's a REIT that invests in healthcare properties. So I really like it for a couple reasons. Obviously, the monthly dividend with a fairly decent yield. I'm not sure exactly the percentage the yield is at right now, but I think what I like about it most is that it captures both of those sectors, being the REIT sector and the healthcare sector. And I did have another American guest, I think, that had a similar comparison for a U.S. stock. I'm sorry, I can't remember what that U.S. stock is at this moment, but
It's probably MPW, medical properties.
yeah,
Um,
very possibly that's what they were talking about.
mhm. Yep, and I have that, and I have been looking at NWH just because, the more medical REITs, the more happy I am.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure if that, like, obviously I buy it through the TSX, Toronto Stock Exchange. I'm not sure if that one is available in New York or not, but I'm sure you could. I'm sure you could easily find out if it is or not, and if it isn't, I'm sure you can buy on the TSX as well. So the opportunity is there for you.
Exactly.
Another sector that's becoming one of my favorites to talk about, although I don't have much of a position in it now, is banking and financial. And this is one where the comparisons between Canada and the U.S. are uh, kind of at the extreme ends of the spectrum. Whereas in the U.S., you have obviously your few big ones, your J.P. Morgan, your Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and a few other very large ones. But then the regional banks are everywhere. Like every state has sort of the First Bank of Wisconsin and the First Bank of Texas, and so on and so on, right?
Hmm.
Whereas in Canada, again, you've probably seen the tweets. Actually, I was just running a Twitter poll about which Canadian bank to buy. There's basically, we call them the big five. Unfortunately, in a Twitter poll, you can only put four options. So I left one of them off the poll. But yeah, anything in the banking or financial sector that catches your eye or that you have an interest in.
Yeah, I mean, everyone needs insurance, and just looking at the political spectrum right now, I don't think we're anywhere close to getting to like Medicare for all or some universal healthcare system. So, these insurance companies are going to still be running rampant. So,
Right.
I view that as a long term holding, unless something drastically changes in politics. But I don't see that coming up. So yeah, most of my financials are in insurance. Um, just to keep it like that. I don't trust the big banks, so I don't like investing in the JP Morgan, although they're super solid and the chances of them going under are very low. But
Yeah.
after seeing what happened in 2008, 2009, I try to steer clear from those.
Right. Yeah. Good points. Yeah. So I was just gonna mention that, like, obviously in the yeah, he's got to get a little bit of FaceTime on the screen. um, he made me lose my train of thought. Just bear with me there. Oh yes. So y- in the U.S., obviously insurance companies also kind of cover that healthcare sector as well because you're buying, or your employer is buying your health insurance or your health coverage. I don't really know how it works in the US. All I know is that you don't have universal health care, whereas in
Hmm.
Canada we do have universal health care. And then so here the insurance companies are obviously set up a little bit different where, they're basically for, your life insurance, your car insurance, your house insurance, those types of insurances. So yeah, there's a few in Canada. There are also attractive insurance companies to buy into. Manulife and Sun Life come to mind. I don't have positions in either of them. I think I might have some exposure to them through an ETF.
Okay.
So yeah, just obviously that's one of the biggest differences between Canada and the US is, Canada has the universal health care, the US doesn't. I think everybody knows that. So which obviously makes the um like I said, the landscape of the insurance business is just different between the two countries, right?
And a lot of it here is very for profit. The and I don't know how it is over in Canada, but viewing a lot of people view these insurance companies as crooked or kind of useless because you pay every month for insurance and they don't always help you, or the amount of help that they do give you is very very small. So
Right.
yeah, but people need insurance, otherwise you can't get like mortgage loans and that kind of stuff. You need home insurance and car insurance, or you get in trouble. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, everyone's going to be like fueling these companies for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely interesting. Um now a sector that I do think there's more of a comparison between Canada and the US is telecoms. Basically in Canada we have three big telecoms being Bell Canada, Telus and Rogers. And similar in the US you also have your big three being like AT&T, Verizon and T-Mobile. So anything in the telecom sector that interests you or
Yeah, so I have AT&T and Verizon. I've been A lot of people give AT&T a bad rap, with their really dumb acquisition of DirecTV and the whole Warner Brothers Media and
right,
Discovery situation that they spun off. But look at that point about 2 or 3 years ago. Yes, there was a substantial amount of debt that they were still working to pay off.
right.
But in doing the spinoff and getting rid of DirecTV, it kind of opened up a lot of that debt that is not necessarily on their balance sheet anymore. So and they still have a very high cash flow. So people like to steer clear from AT&T. I am still slowly contributing to it just because it's at insane prices. And as far as insane prices, I mean Verizon, it's all time lows. Um, you know, Not all time lows, but for the very recent past, it's as low as it's ever been, and it's still one of the biggest telecom companies in the states. So it's like,
Mhm.
you know, I that those companies, in my opinion, are too big to fail. Will they maybe merge into each other? I mean, possibly, but
Right.
it's still up in the air, and they're still so massive, and everyone uses them in some way. So yeah, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't at least take a look at these and entertain the idea of starting a position there if you haven't already.
Yeah, great points. Similar in Canada, like Bell Canada has been around forever and a day, and it's like you said, it seems like it's too big to fail. And they're not just a telecommunications company anymore. They're now a media company as well, owning um, like Sportsnet and different types of things like that. So they've kept up with the times. And then there's also the your cell phone too, right? Everybody's addicted to their cell phones. Everybody's on their phone all day, every day.
Oh
So
yeah.
I see these telecom companies as not necessarily too big to fail, but just they're well positioned in the market because everybody who's probably 13 years old and older has a cell phone and they're on it all day, every day, right? So these companies are making money.
Exactly. And I mean, my dad's a third grade teacher, and some of his students have phones. So the demographic is just getting younger and younger as like
Right.
companies like TikTok and these social media apps, kind of take over the youth. More younger kids are wanting their phone, and parents are more than happy to give it to them. So
Yeah.
starting off their customer base
Well,
even
yeah,
earlier.
even, even as like a 3 and 4-year-old, the moms now just hand the kid the phone to keep them entertained. And like you said, they can be watching, cartoons on YouTube or whatever. And, you know, I'm old enough to remember when a phone was just like a landline on a wall and all you could do was make phone calls and talk to people. And
Yeah.
now it seems like talking to people on a phone is like the last thing anybody thinks about doing.
No, you text someone, "Hey, can I call you?" before you actually call them. So,
And I usually say, "No, just text me." Right?
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, good points. Yeah, telecoms, on both sides of the border, big, massive companies. I don't really know because I haven't looked into them too much. Like I said, the big three in the U.S., but the ones in Canada, I've started a small position in Bell, which I plan to continue to dollar cost average into. And yeah, so again, a very nice quarterly dividend. I'm not sure exactly the percentage yield at this point, like right now, but yeah, I'm happy with it. And like I said, I'm just going to keep buying in. And yeah, so hopefully someday I'll have enough shares of Bell that they pay me to pay my cell phone bill with it.
Yeah, that's always the kind of the goal, is to have your have your bills be covered by the positions you have in those companies. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it would be. I actually put out a tweet a week or so ago, sort of about that, like invest in your phone company so they can pay your phone bill, invest in your bank so they can pay your mortgage, invest in your, electricity provider so they can pay your power bill, and invest in an insurance company so they can pay your insurance. Like and it can happen too, right? If you build up those dividends and suddenly, not suddenly, but eventually you have these companies that you use paying you through a dividend to cover the bills back to them, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah, and that's always a really good goal to achieve. If your phone bill is, for example, $50 a month, and you invest enough in those companies that you are getting, would that be $150 per quarter, would cover your phone bill for the entire year. That's a great
Yeah.
goal to set to get to that point.
Yeah, I think it's just interesting or maybe even wise to invest in the companies that you use. I know I've seen other people argue the merits back and forth of that, but to me, I think it's a great idea.
Absolutely.
What else have we talked? We haven't got to the energy sector yet, and maybe when we began recording or just before we started, you were talking about wanting some more exposure to the Canadian market, and I know there are a few energy stocks that are listed on in New York, being like Algonquin Power, which I'm sure you've seen people tweet about on Twitter, Suncor, Pembina Pipeline. Those are pretty much the three most popular Canadian energy stocks. And I'm quite sure, obviously, I buy them. I don't have Pembina. I have the other two. I have Suncor and Algonquin, which again, obviously, I buy on the TSX. But I'm quite sure they're all available in New York. Um, anything in the energy sector that interests you?
It's kind of funny. I'm not interested in that at the moment. That's the one sector I don't think I have any exposure to, just because, with the rise of electric cars, um, you know, I mean, companies are still going to be using fuel, but it seems like it's not going away anytime soon. I just like investing in, kind of the more sure thing that I feel comfortable holding for 30 years, because
Right.
with the energy stocks, who knows? And it's funny, you bring up the energy. My coworker, 2 years ago during the crash and everything, he bought like 200 or 300 shares of like ExxonMobil.
Hey, buddy, relax. Sorry about that.
Oh no, it's all good. But yeah, my buddy got 200, 300 shares of ExxonMobil at its absolute low during that time, and he got so lucky, and he's just holding it, and he's just collecting dividends, and it's just
Nice.
compounding for him. And that's great, but I don't feel comfortable getting there at this point because I think that boat has sailed for the time being. I feel like it's those companies are just gonna keep you know staying about the same. They're not gonna. I don't think they're gonna dip too much unless some crazy thing happens again. But yeah, I like sticking to. I'd rather invest in like consumer staples that I don't think that they're going to be going away anytime soon. Where
Right.
energy, it could. Who knows?
Well, we're still going to need energy, whether it's oil and gas or if it's renewables. And I believe both Suncor, I believe all three of them are into renewables, like whether it's solar or wind. So might be something you want to look at. Just
Yeah,
throwing it out there.
yeah. I mean, I'm not opposed to it, especially if someone or if a company comes out and says they're going to start investing in like solar or wind more. Then yeah, that's something that's interesting to me. But yeah, for the time being,
Yeah.
I'm just safe with mine. But yeah,
Oh, and I believe it's not. They've come out and said they're going to start. I'm quite sure they've started. Like I'm quite sure they have
oh
solar
nice.
fields and windmills and whatnot. So I'd have to look deeper into exactly what they have where. But yeah, um, just throwing that out there. That obviously we need energy. You're in Idaho. I'm sure winters there get pretty cold, the same as here. You need to heat your home through the winter, and whether you're
Exactly.
using renewables to do that, or oil and gas, or propane, or whatever you're using to heat your home, y we all need energy, right?
Hmm.
Moving on, you just mentioned consumer staples, which is another favorite sector of mine. So yeah, let's jump into consumer staples.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like Kimberly Clark, Coca Cola, Procter and Gamble. Those are the my favorite ones.
Yeah,
And I've been trying to convince myself to get into Pepsi because they are more diverse as a brand than Coca Cola. I think they have way more in like food products than Coca Cola does. But
yeah.
it's just I have so many consumer staples companies. I need to stay diverse and invest in other sectors.
No, consumer staples is a great sector. Everybody has to eat every single day, which is why I like it. A few things there, just random tidbits of information. There happens to be a Procter and Gamble plant here, close to where I live. Actually, it's just around the corner from my work
Oh,
in the
nice.
industrial park. And then another, just I think it was last Monday. Did you happen to see the picture I tweeted of the PepsiCo Quaker Oats plant in Trenton?
Oh, I didn't. What
Oh, you
happened?
missed that. Okay. I'll find that tweet and DM it to you. But yeah, it was just so um I was at the building beside it, just because I had to be there, and I saw the sign. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna take a picture of this sign and tweet it out, because I know there's a lot of people that do invest in Pepsi. So I thought that was just interesting. A couple comments were like, I think I own maybe 1/10 of the bolt in the bottom right corner of that sign. So yeah, I just thought that was neat. And then you also mentioned Coca-Cola. Have you seen any of the recent tweets about how much Warren Buffett makes in dividends just from Coca-Cola?
I don't pay like I know he makes a bunch in Coca Cola. I've seen his Apple ones, and
Yeah.
it makes me sick.
I think his annual dividend just from Coca-Cola was somewhere in the range of $800 million.
Is that annual or quarterly?
Yeah, annual.
Annual. Jeez.
Yeah, but
But that just kind of shows the power of dividends. He's been invested in that company for 70-ish years, probably at this
right.
point, if not
Yeah.
longer. And as long as you stay patient with it, that could be you if you have
Yeah.
the wherewithal and the stomach to stay in.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's kind of an interesting, there's a couple different ones, but the threads of how much he makes on different just in dividends on different stocks, and Apple was actually one of them as well. And I think Pepsi was another one. But yeah, if you happen to stumble across that tweet thread, definitely take a look at it.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, so sticking with with the consumer staples, and again, also sort of healthcare, like Johnson and Johnson, a company like that, obviously is they've been around forever and a day, and they're not going anywhere as well. So that's any thoughts on something like a Johnson and Johnson?
Yeah, I actually I I don't know if this is just a rumor, but I heard that there's a potential that Johnson and Johnson could be splitting into like healthcare, like their healthcare division and their like consumer
Right.
products or beauty and cosmetics or whatever. So that whenever that happens, if that happens, that would be very interesting to take advantage of that. But yeah, I love Johnson and Johnson. It's been around for forever, and
Yeah.
it's super massive. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Cool.
there really isn't too much more to say about it.
I own a few shares that are just, or a few companies that are just basically outright, um, restaurants. So one I have is called Pizza Pizza. They're a Canadian company, and they're in the exact same category as like say a Pizza Hut or Domino's or Little Caesars. They're just like a takeout and delivery place. Probably have a few eat-in locations. But yeah, they pay a nice, healthy monthly dividend, and I like it because people are going to eat pizza, right? So it's just it's probably one of my bigger positions. I don't know my exact percentage breakdown right now, but yeah, so that's one that I like in the Canadian market, in the food and consumer staples sector. Another one I have is called SRV, and they basically have restaurants. There's a chain of restaurants around the Greater Toronto area called Jack Astor's. So um, they're probably like comparable to say like the Outback type, where it's like Outback Steakhouse or Applebee's and that kind of chain restaurant, right? Like
Gotcha.
bar and grill type restaurant. Um, and I bought them like right in the middle of the pandemic, and thought to myself, I'm either the dumbest investor out there because I'm buying a restaurant in the middle of a pandemic, or I'm the smartest, one or the other, right? I wasn't sure, and I was like, I don't think there's any in between on this one.
Yeah, yeah, during the pandemic, like the movie theaters were out,
Yeah,
so it's just like who knows where you're going to invest or if these companies are going to come back, because a lot of the smaller ones they close up shop, at least around my area. So
right.
it's always tough to try and determine, okay, is this one going to make it? Is that one going to make it?
Yeah. So, anyways, that one has done quite well since things have opened back up, and again, a nice monthly dividend, which I enjoy every month when it shows up in my account, and it's like, oh, there's a few more dollars. Good, good, and good for me. That's what we're trying to do here. Just get a few more dollars at a time, and a few more, and a few more, and a few more. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh wow.
Do you mind me asking you a question real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Are you, how, just if you're comfortable sharing this, how many positions do you have in your portfolio, roughly?
Oh, too many. It's over 20.
Okay. Okay. Well,
It's
I'm, yeah, I'm over 22, but it's just funny seeing some people being like, oh, you should just like have your portfolio being like a few really solid companies and positions. But I don't, to me, I don't know if it's just that dopamine hit, but
yeah.
I love seeing those dividends come in my account. And like a month like this month, I have Verizon and AT&T pay out the first of the month, and then I have a 2 week break until I get another dopamine hit. And it's just so tough to not try and add another position to fill in that gap there. But yeah.
So, speaking of that, I did not plan this in any way whatsoever. It's just happened to luck out this way. For my monthly dividend payouts, I happen to have one that pays out on the last day of the month, so it arrives in my account on the first day of the following month. And then I have another one that you've probably heard me talk about, RioCan. It's one of my favorite Canadian REITs,
Hmm.
and it pays out around the 7th. I think it hits my account on the 8th. And then obviously, a lot of companies pay their dividend on the 15th of the month, so I have that um, come in on like usually the 16th. It'll arrive in my settle into my account, and then I have another one that pays out around the third week of the month, like around the 25th or 26th. So, like I said, this wasn't planned, but yeah, I'm getting those dopamine hits a little more often than you are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like there's some months where it's like, you know, four in a day,
Yeah.
like just a bunch of them. And then the rest of the month, I'm just sitting on my hands being like, hey, can we get another one coming in?
Yeah. It would be nice to find companies where you could have like one every single day of the year, but I don't think that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to have a very large portfolio to get that.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, that would be obviously a minimum of 365 different companies. It's like I think that'd be too hard to track.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so like you said, you get 4 or 5 in one day. For me, it's that's on the 16th, like, 'cause so many of mine pay out their monthly on the 15th. So many of those REITs that I have pay out on the 15th, and then they're settled into my account on the 16th, depending on a weekend where the 15th may fall. But yeah, so just interesting the way sort of the timing has worked out on mine. Like I said, it was not planned at all in any way whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've covered quite a few sectors: REITs, energy, banks and financial, telecom, uh, consumer staples, healthcare, technology. Any other sectors that we haven't talked about that you want to bring up?
Yeah, I mean, like I have super small positions in like industrials and materials, but that's,
Right,
I don't know if that's worth even mentioning. But one of my, and again, this is not financial advice, but the one that has been really on my radar is Lyondell Basel Industries. It's a materials company. They deal in chemicals and stuff like that. But
right.
yeah, it's funny, in I think it was June or July, they had a special dividend of like over $5 per share.
Oh,
And so,
nice.
I love tracking my own like dividends every month, and I have so many spreadsheets tracking it. But
I love a
and
good
then
spreadsheet.
oh yeah, and then but for that month, it's just so high above all my other months, so it looks like a complete outlier. And it's like, oh crap, I want to keep improving, but if you have one that's super high, and then the next quarter it's way lower, even though it's not really that low, but it's just that special dividend popped up.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah.
I had one of those too, a special dividend. Actually, that SRV I was just mentioning, they had a special dividend payout a few months ago, and I didn't know it was happening. I didn't know it was coming, and I woke up to like the notification on my phone. And I'm like, "Is this wrong?" I thought it was wrong. I thought somebody did something wrong, and it was going to be taken out of my account. So later that day, I hopped onto Yahoo Finance and looked them up, and it was like, "Oh, special dividend. Okay, thank you very much. I'll take it." Right?
Yeah. Those are the best surprises.
Yeah, right. But yeah, so I guess keeping with that theme of that last sector you mentioned, like materials and industrial. I don't know if this really falls in. I think this might be another sector completely, but transportation is something that I haven't gotten into yet, but would like to, because transportation, is so important to the backbone of the economy. Whether and obviously the trade between Canada and the U.S., the cross border shipping, whether it's on truck or by rail, and yeah, that's just another industry. And it's kind of funny because like I work in purchasing and logistics, so I'm working with these companies every day, but I've yet to
Mhm.
sort of pull the trigger on investing in any of them. You have any thoughts on in transportation?
I don't. I the only ones that I would like consider, I don't know if they'd be in the considered the like a transportation sector, but it'd be like UPS and FedEx,
Right.
shipping those
Yeah, I
containers
would
and those
put them
packages all the
into.
time.
I think I would put them into the transportation category.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't have any of those yet, but I've been definitely eyeing those two to see if I could add those. But
Yeah, on your watch
yeah.
list, so to speak.
Yep.
Nice. Well, we've really ripped through a lot of the sectors very quickly, which is great. I thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to spend some time and talk with us this morning. Talk with me this morning. And anything that you would like to shout out, obviously shout out your Twitter handle, get people to go and follow you there. Anything else that you do, like a YouTube channel or a blog or anything you would like to mention?
Yeah, yeah, and again, if you like what you heard from me, come follow me over at on Twitter, Dividend Bulls with an S on the end. There's a lot of Dividend Bull variations, but mine just has an S on the end.
Yeah,
um, I try to capture that one because my family's from Spain,
Oh,
and
right. Wow.
they live in like the Basque Country, which is like with where the running of the bulls happens, and so that's just been on my mind. But when I got that one, it's all the variations were taken,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But yeah, and so I'm planning on having a newsletter, starting a newsletter January 1st of 23, and yeah, and on that I'm just going to be sharing my portfolio. I don't share a lot of like my specific positions and how large they are, what my
Right.
purchases are, like down to the minute detail. But for this newsletter, that's my plan, is to just kind of give a summary month to month on
Yep.
what I did, what I bought, what dividends came in, what my allocation percentages are, just totally nerd out. So yeah, if you're into that kind of stuff, look for that January 1st. But
Cool.
yeah, that's all that I need to plug. I don't have too many social channels or anything.
Nice. Yeah, I'll definitely give you a follow on Twitter at Dividend Bulls. It's you tweet out some great stuff. So, and again, thank you so much for taking the time to have this discussion with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Dave. It was a pleasure.